Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, so if that's something you're interested in, stick around. Hello and welcome to the Literature Podcast, A Novel Review. My name is Seamus, your host, and together we will discuss, dissect and explore the wonderful world of literature, and the wonderful world of literature is a vast and dense jungle, so let's start making our way through, one book at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another week, another episode, another book, same podcast host. I'm Seamus, the host of A Novel Review, this little book podcast, and today I'm going to be talking about this lovely book here, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Fantastic book, book 6 in the series. I have done the previous 5 already, if you want to go back and check them out, if you're new to the show. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoy the episode. But before we get there, a bit of housekeeping. If you would like to like and subscribe, that would be absolutely fantastic. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe down there in the corner. There's a little duck for you to click. It's very cute. Click it and see what happens. And yeah, 5-star reviews just make my day. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, let's begin. Let's dive into the book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This was, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, this was and continues to be my favorite Harry Potter book. I've always thought that. I've always believed that. It's the only one prior to this reread of the series that I'd actually read more than once. I think I read it another 2 times in high school. I don't know why. I just always seem to love this one. It's also my favorite film just by default, although the film does miss out so much, and they also dragged like the saturation down to like 0 and pretty much had a black and white film. They lost so much of the beautiful color that Hogwarts has to offer. That's neither here nor there. But this was, my favorite book. I think I had a few initial concerns coming into this book because I had to start it pretty much after reading Order of the Phoenix, and if you've listened to that episode, I didn't love that book that much. It's, I think, definitely going to be my least favorite of the Harry Potter books. Doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's just in last place for my favorites. There's always got to be a last place. Relax. And so I think just coming into this book, having to dive straight in, I was feeling a bit of Harry Potter fatigue. You know, they are quite big books. Order is 800 pages. This is 600 pages. So they're quite books to read, quite big books to be reading back to back. And I think I was a bit sort of nervous, I guess, because when you've quite openly declared that something is your favorite, you kind of also want it to live up to your own expectations when you revisit it. And yeah, jumping into the first chapter, it was a bit loose, I'm going to say. It wasn't that engaging. It wasn't that interesting. It wasn't the standard sort of opening chapter that I've come to know and love. It's a chapter between the Prime Minister, the Muggle Prime Minister, the new Minister for Magic, and the old Minister for Magic, Scrimgeour, the other guy, Cornelius Fudge. I don't know how I forgot that for a second. And then the British Prime Minister. And it's, I'd say, not a very interesting chapter, but I do understand the value of it because it sort of starts the story off intertwining the magical and Muggle world into one thing. And it's now we're seeing the pervading sense of Voldemort sort of infiltrating the Muggle world in a lot more of a serious, in a lot more serious way. So I did get that, but I was also like, it just wasn't that interesting an opening chapter. So I think I was initially feeling quite worried, scared, fearful that this book actually wasn't going to live up to what I remembered it to be. So yeah, that's where that's where my head was at, I guess, when I started reading it. I think I should do a brief overview, although all the Harry Potter books are pretty similar. We're back for another year at Hogwarts. Another year of mischief and mayhem. This year is a little different, of course, because at the end of Order of the Phoenix, there is some concession among the wizarding world that Voldemort has in fact returned. So that's almost like, it feels like that's almost a weight lifted off in this story because there's not that tension anymore of, is Harry lying? Isn't he lying? Do people believe him? Do they not believe him? That's almost alleviated in this story, which is quite nice. And basically it's just another year at Hogwarts. There are a few additional things, but I think in terms of a very brief overview, it's probably the briefest I've ever given, in that Harry goes to school for another year and we strap on for a ride. So that's where we start. Okay, let's start getting into some of, I think, the meatier aspects of this book. Let's start with Dumbledore. Dumbledore, nice of you to show up, mate. Where the fuck have you been for the last 5 books? because I'll tell you something, we have been right here running amok in your school while you have been off hunting Horcruxes apparently, although we don't know that as the reader, which just makes us think that you are an incredibly, I guess, terrible headmaster, because yeah, these kids just seem to have free reign and you are never around, it appears. I don't even know if you were in the last book, Order of the Phoenix, but apparently you were. But no, we obviously don't know at that stage, or this stage in the story, that Dumbledore is hunting Horcruxes and sort of got a larger agenda. We, as the reader, just want to have a bit more Dumbledore time. I think I speak for everyone when I say that. And we finally get it in this book. He tells Harry that they're going to be having sort of special lessons where Harry's going to come to his office and he's going to, well, we don't actually know what the lessons are going to be, but we're very excited from the beginning because, I mean, I'd say he's everyone's probably second favorite character, because he's just that larger than life character that is really interesting and intriguing, and you sort of just want to have telespeech speak to you, because he's definitely got that life experience that you want to know about. You know, he's an incredibly knowledgeable person. He's known as the greatest living wizard and perhaps one of the greatest wizards of all time. He's headmaster of this magical school that is just incredible, and we just don't see him that much in the series up until this book, which is fantastic. I'd say something else that really piques my interest that I should have mentioned earlier is I think this is the best cover of the series as well, because the cover of the book normally alludes to something in the book, and it has traditionally for the original titles of the Harry Potter books. So then you look at this title and it's Harry and Dumbledore in a ring of fire, obviously in a fight for their lives, and you just see that and you think, yeah, get me to that scene. I want to know what that scene's about, because that looks epic, and it's a pretty good scene as well. Anyways, so yeah, we finally do get some Dumbledore time. It's really good. It's really important to the story. I'll touch on that in a second, but I think coming into this story and then starting to reread it, I realized that yes, it was still going to remain my favorite of the Harry Potter series. And I sort of wondered why it was going to remain my favorite, because in terms of story, this might be controversial, and I've already said I love the book, but not a whole lot happens, I don't feel, in this book. There's sort of a mundaneness to this book. And I think that's what I actually really love about this book, is that there is a kind of very wonderfully mundane aspect to the book. Not a lot happens. And when you think about the other books, when you think about Philosopher's Stone, it's kind of like an introductory book. Everyone's finding their feet. We're finding our feet as the reader. Rowling's finding her feet as a writer, as a storyteller. Harry's finding his feet in this school, and it's very scene setting. Chamber of Secrets, you're kind of distracted from the overarching story of Harry's schooling life, because there's a great serpent potentially haunting the school, hunting down muggles. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry himself is being hunted by the Grim, and there's the release of Sirius Black, which draws a lot of attention away from the schooling year. Goblet of Fire, of course, the schooling year is entirely interrupted by this great Triwizard tournament that's going on. Order of the Phoenix is probably the exception to what I'm trying to make in this point, because we do get a lot of the schooling year, but it is kind of interrupted by this overarching politicization. That's definitely meant to be a correct word in there somewhere. But sort of politics interfering in school life that detracts you from school life and really kind of makes you hate it. But in this book, the story actually kind of really sinks you into the schooling life of Harry, and it really creates this really nice, mundane story where we actually get to see Harry go to classes and go to Quidditch practice. We get to see Harry sort of succeeding in those classes thanks to the wonderful find of the potions book. We get to see things like Horace Slughorn's little dinner parties and then a Christmas party, and we get all these wonderful scenes, and I feel like it's because, as I said earlier, that the tension's been lifted because now people know Voldemort's alive and he's large and well, that there's almost this tension of when's he coming back. That's been lifted, and did he actually come back? That's also been lifted. So there seems to be, I feel, a bit more freedom in this book to sort of relax, and I think in terms of narrative story arcs, sort of a general narrativization story arc, we know that there's always sort of a bit of a lull just before the epic conclusion in most stories, and this is kind of that lull before we get to the last book, The Deathly Hallows. And I'd say it's a really lovely lull because, yeah, we get the wonderful mix of teen angst and seeing them grown up and start to now form relationships with each other. I'm going to say there's some brief flirtations with dark academia. I saw someone say that the entire series is dark academia. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I disagree with that. But kind of some flirtations with dark academia, I feel. And then, of course, we get the wonderful mix of the fantasy thrown in there. The backstory to Voldemort sort of life. And I guess that's sort of where to go next in this story is that's definitely for me the most interesting aspect of this story is the lessons that Harry actually has with Dumbledore. It's kind of like just often enough and appearing enough in the story to keep you really interested and rushing to the next part because you really want to know sort of the next memory that you're going to explore. Plus, it's also like a super interesting period because I think it really highlights the similarities between Harry and Voldemort. Both are orphans. Both sort of grew up in a unloving kind of childhood, I guess. Tom Riddle grew up in an orphanage, and Harry grew up with some very cruel aunties and uncles. But I guess it's sort of that you understand. You don't understand how Voldemort got to where he is, but you see the similarities between them and see that if Harry had sort of rejected love, and like if we go back to the very first book, rejected the friendship of Ron, and then as an extension Hermione from then, if he'd sort of taken these steps, you can see how he could have built to someone similar to Voldemort. And it's sort of, it's interesting, and I think it's interesting for Harry as well to see the similarities in their childhoods and how you really are just, I mean, it seems so cliche to say that you're built from your own past and you become whatever you want to be and all that kind of stuff, but it's really nice to sort of see the similarities between them. Now, even though I have said it's quite a quiet story, I think there is still a healthy amount of mystery going on in this. Naturally, with the title of the book, The Half-Blood Prince, you think that's going to play like a huge aspect of the story, and it's going to be like a really significant aspect. You know, we've had the Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, Goblet of Fire, Deathly Hallows. Like, they all play major parts in the story. But The Half-Blood Prince, when you're reading it, you kind of get this raggedy potions book, and you're kind of reading it going, what has this got to do with the story of Voldemort? What has this got to do with anything in the story at all? It just seems to be a potions book that someone's put a name in. And it seems to be kind of interesting because even though it's not, I'm going to say, the most interesting storyline, because Harry's just kind of like, who is this Half-Blood Prince? And it's kind of like, yeah, like I'd like to know. I obviously want to know because I'm the reader. But it's not, you don't think it's going to play like a huge part in the story. But then you start thinking, well, does it play a huge part in the story? It must play a huge part in the story because it's where the title of the book gets its name from. And then you start trying to wonder. And then there's sort of all the theories that Harry becomes obsessed with. You know, was it his father? Is it someone else? What's going on? And it's this kind of wonderfully simple mystery that just sort of keeps the story turning a little bit more, that just kind of adds a tiny bit of tension without being too overpowering to the story, that really kind of, I think, just adds to the lovely charm that this story possesses. Something else I really enjoyed about this story is, and I kind of mentioned it before, is how the main sort of tension of this story, while learning about Voldemort and his backstory, is actually then we learn from those lessons what Harry has to do, and it's sort of get this memory from Professor Slughorn, and it's kind of the whole reason for this story is just to get this one memory. And I think it's a really genius move because, again, it was just another way that inserted Harry back into sort of the participation of daily life. You know, he needs to get on the professor's good side. He needs to try coax this memory out of him. And what it does is it just sinks Harry and us as the reader deeper into just the daily life mundaneness of this story, because it's not something outside of Hogwarts. It's something involving a teacher. And again, it was just this lovely kind of culmination of different situations that all seem, I thought, really well balanced, that create this, I think, just, it's my favorite Harry Potter. It still is my favorite Harry Potter. It definitely, I think, will always be my favorite Harry Potter. I have to concede, though, that I believe it was sort of in the Goblet episode and the Order of the Phoenix episode, I said I'm definitely going to reveal that my favorite scene is in this book. And I mean, this scene for me has been my favorite scene of the entire Harry Potter series. It is the scene that I hated, that was not included in the film, and sort of made me hate the film, but then also love the film because it's based on the favorite book. And it was just this scene. It's this one scene that when HBO Max announced that they were doing Harry Potter, I thought, oh, interesting, that's cool. Like, it's a pretty untouched world at the moment in terms of like the wider expansion, and it's like definitely a great area to sort of sink your teeth into and have a few different series. And then I heard that they were remaking the Harry Potter books, and I think I felt like everyone. I was like, oh, well, why? Like, the films are pretty good. We grew up with them. We had a lot of fun with them. It's probably a bit too soon. And then my mind went, but if they do it, they better do it right, because I want this one scene. And then I got to the end of this book, and that one scene is not in there. And I thought, that's odd, because I can remember it so clearly, so vividly, that now I'm wondering if I have just been like completely arrogant in my execution of life, and in my head created a piece of fan fiction, mentally then inserted that into the book, and then proclaimed that the best scene in the entire series in my head. I don't know if this is just absolutely confusingly arrogant by me. I don't know if I've gotten confused and the scene's coming in the next book, which is of course entirely possible, but I was so certain it was in this book that I don't know what's going on anymore. It's kind of like made me question my childhood as, history versus memory. What the hell is even real anymore? I don't even know. But yeah, the scene, you're going to have to wait, I guess, potentially another book. You might never get the scene because it might not exist. So yeah, hopefully it comes in the next book, because otherwise my entire childhood is resting upon the laurels of self-delusion, and that would be incredibly annoying, to be quite honest. I've done my best to sort of avoid talking about the films throughout, all other 5 episodes, but I think I just have to have like a little whinge about the film, because they really did like miss out on so much of the vibrancy that the book has. I think Hogwarts is this fantastic kind of, it's a character almost. Hogwarts, the school, is this background character, and it's the backdrop of so much that happens in this story. And there's just sort of, you get none of that charm in the film. They've taken the color of the film and just like completely drained it out. And I guess that's to create this kind of moody atmosphere of like bad things are happening in the world, and like, look, the color's being drained from the world because Voldemort's back. But it's like, no, if you go watch the first film, there's such vibrant colors with all the flag colors, the green and black of Slytherin, the red and gold of Gryffindor. When they're running down to Hagrid's hut, it's like luscious green grass, and there's this huge castle behind them. And it's just like, where's all that charm in the film? It just was completely stripped, and I absolutely hate it. And I think it made me hate it more because we didn't get that. Because the book is just so colorful. The book is just so vibrant. There's just so much that happens that sounds really beautiful. And that's sort of another reason why I'm excited for the new series. That's neither here nor there. So yeah, let's chat about Horcruxes. The Horcruxes are this wonderful thing that have been inserted throughout the story. We've got Tom Riddle's diary back in the Chamber of Secrets, and I think they come at, well, no, I would have liked them earlier in the story, but I think they come at a really nice time. Learning about the Horcruxes, I think, is kind of interesting because it shows just the kind of lengths that Voldemort's willing to go to simply survive. And, I think it's incredibly frightening to consider that. I did love the scene where Dumbledore reveals how he's been sort of hunting Horcruxes, and he's been trying to find Tom Riddle had gone to this piece of coastline, and Dumbledore spent like a long time. I don't know how he did it. Maybe he was just like himself, just trawling the English or the UK coastline, trying to find this particular patch of coast that Tom had visited on a school excursion, and that he had a picture of where he'd potentially hidden a Horcrux. And Dumbledore reveals that it had taken like a really long time to find this place. And I thought, isn't that just so different from like the modern day? Because obviously this is set in the 90s. Google Earth didn't exist. I know there's that crazy dude that I see on Instagram. I think he might even be on TikTok, where he just like drops, the game is like geo-guessing or something, and it like drops you on a random part of the world, and then he like guesses it. He's like, oh, that blade of grass is blowing south. We're obviously in Turkey. And you're like, what? So Dumbledore definitely needed that dude on his side when he was trying to find this patch of land, because it took Dumbledore a long time. And yeah, just with modern technology, it would not take that long anymore, which I found kind of interesting. But eventually that scene leads to this scene, which is them fighting, trying to get the locket, which they think is a Horcrux, which ends up not being a Horcrux. It's incredibly, incredibly devastating, but it does lead to this wicked, wicked scene of Dumbledore just like lighting up the world and showing us some real power. And it's great because there's the duel, of course, in Order of the Phoenix, but then there's this scene as well, and Dumbledore has been weakened, but he's still able to summon this like great amount of power. And I think it's like a great scene to get just before the untimely scene of course, Dumbledore's demise. What an incredibly depressing scene, a nerve-wracking scene, because you just hope, you just think, you're just praying that something's going to happen. You really hope that Snape's going to come through and just play the good guy, which he does. But at that stage, we don't know that. But I just remember reading it for the first time and just feeling so hopeless because, I don't know, I feel like Dumbledore teases us a lot and teases Harry a lot, and he could just unload all this information, but he kind of like drip feeds it through these 5 stories, and especially through this story. And he's kind of drip fed a lot of information about Horcruxes, and it's kind of like, just tell us more, tell us more, tell us more, like tell us everything. He's always like, no, we'll pick this up next lesson. And it's like, no, maybe you should just tell me now because you're getting pretty old, dude. And lo and behold, he dies. And it's kind of this like really depressing, frustrating scene because we kind of have enough information. Harry kind of has enough information to go on to continue this almost now impossible quest of finding these Horcruxes. But he just doesn't have enough that you feel confident that he's going to succeed. And for that reason, I was really annoyed, but I was also like super happy that Dumbledore had died because I think it just sort of gave that extra element of, damn, like this is like really difficult now. This is really going to be a challenge. This isn't going to be some joke. This is Harry Potter's story. This isn't Dumbledore's. Dumbledore's story came ages ago when he was battling Grindelwald and all that. This is really like Harry's story, Harry's quest, Harry's journey. Harry needs to do it alone and by himself. And I think losing Dumbledore just really kind of sows that element of doubt in us as the readers as to how is this quest going to be done? How is it going to be completed? There's only one book to go. You know, it's going to be really, really tough. So I think it was an incredibly annoying death because he was such a great character and we'd just finally gotten some solid time with him. But I think it was an incredibly timely death in that it just sort of creates this, I guess, feeling of, guess what? Not every character is safe. People are going to die. This is an incredibly serious issue, and the person that was most likely to help us in this case is now dead. So that was The Half-Blood Prince. Definitely my favorite. My rating system is very dodgy because I cannot remember what I've been rating the other ones. I think I've always given them a 4 or a 4.5. I'm going to give this a 4.6 just so I think it's clearly ahead of the others. It's definitely ahead. It's definitely my favorite. It's definitely the most fun. It's the most Hogwarts-based, enjoyable story, mixed with fantasy, mixed with history, mixed with Voldemort, Dumbledore as well. It's the perfect combination of all the characters. So that was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So what am I reading this week? Well, we're following suit, and for the last time, I am reading a Harry Potter book. Not the last time in my life. I'll probably reread them again at some stage. But this week, I am reading Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I haven't read this book since it came out. I think it came out like 2007, 2008. I can probably look in the front cover here. 2007. I had just started high school. I was 13 years old. I remember it. It was global news. I'm sure we all remember global news. Like I remember seeing like armored trucks or something like carting these books around. And I remember looking at the cover and just going, yeah, cool. That looks epic. Big book. I'm about halfway through and I'm honestly a little worried because so far they've found one Horcrux, and that is the Horcrux that they thought they'd found at the end of the Half-Blood Prince, which is the locket. And I'm like, damn, you guys still got like quite a few Horcruxes to go. You better pick up the pace a little bit, please. Nevertheless, it's still it's incredibly readable. I think it's an incredibly different book because one, we're not returning to Hogwarts school as a student. Quite a few people die early on, including this is a spoiler. Sorry, I'm sort of like starting the episode on this, which isn't timely, but Hedwig dying is quite incredibly sad and unnecessary. So I feel like I should stop talking about it because otherwise I'm just going to start talking about it more. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm hopefully going to smash it this weekend. It will be out next month, so see you then for that. So thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Just a reminder, if you would like to like and subscribe, click the duck. 5-star reviews, they're also incredible. But as always, just thank you for your attention. So I think it's time to end this episode, and today, to take us away, I think this quote that I saw from Werner Herzog, I've got it here on my phone, and it says, "Civilization is like a thin layer of ice upon a deep ocean of chaos and darkness."